Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Indira, and this week we've got a bit of a change as Callum Elson will be joining us as the third male guest on this podcast. Callum's going to talk all things through the mindset and dealing with a major injury after he suffered a serious Achilles injury involving surgery back at the Indoor World Championships this year. I think that mindset and dealing with challenge is definitely something which extends upon the boundaries of gender. Also, be sure to check out The Distance Project on Instagram and YouTube, where Callum shares his journey to the top of the sport, as well as sheds a spotlight on elite distance running in the UK. Okay, lots to learn in this episode, but before we get into it, please be sure to give a rating if you've been enjoying the show, as this helps to give credibility to the podcast so I can keep bringing you guys the guests you want to hear from. Also, don't forget the link in the bio on Instagram at Fitter, Faster, Happier does have a feedback form if you're interested in that too. Okay. Let's get into the episode. Hi, Callum. How are you? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm all good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Have you been up to any training this morning?
I have. I've been at the pool actually this morning. I didn't have the session or anything, just like pretty easy aqua jogging, which is kind of a daily thing for me at the moment, and then some rehab in the pool. So yeah, I'm getting back to running, which is a good thing, hopefully soon.
Nice. I guess getting the motion beats front crawl.
Yeah, exactly that. Like swimming, I think would be just so long for me, just because of one, I can swim obviously, but like I'm not good at swimming. I feel like it'd be quite demoralizing. Whereas aqua jogging is, yeah, like you said, it's just running, but your feet are not on the floor. So all runners should be able to do it pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so for anyone who doesn't already know you, can you briefly introduce yourself as an athlete?
Yeah, Callum Elson. I run for Hoka right now, as of January this year, and I'm primarily a middle distance athlete, but do cross country and things like that. Came into the sport a little bit later, didn't really do too much as a junior, and then over the last couple of years, I've kind of taken things more seriously and progressed and stuff like that. So brief introduction to me. I do a bit of everything, to be honest.
Nice, yep, and progressed quite nicely is a bit of an understatement. He's had some pretty substantial achievements and also the Distance Project as well. So if you haven't already heard of that, be sure to check it out on Instagram and YouTube for some really great content. And okay, so just a couple of questions that I ask everyone kind of at the start. For you, what's your most significant running moment so far?
Good question. Significant moment running so far. I mean, for me, in terms of like an actual breakthrough, I won a world silver medal on the road last year in Riga at the like first world road running championships, which went somewhat under the radar, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. Like it's not the same as like a world champs on the track or an Olympics or anything like that. But for me personally, it was like a big step up from being a very good national athlete to then being able to show that I could compete against, a world class kind of field. And from there, that's what kickstarted me managing to get a pro contract, kind of get into better races and things like that. So yeah, that stands out as like a kind of a real breakthrough moment. But like with most things, that's the product of like months and months and years of hard work and different bits. It's not an overnight success, but it's a great weekend that myself, Charlie, who helped film the videos, came out. My girlfriend was there, and when we're all together, we always say like that was a class weekend. Like I don't know if it's just because I got the medal or just like because of the time we had, but yeah, we always look back on it really fondly.
No, that's great to hear. And I mean, they do say happy athletes are successful athletes. So, looks like the evidence is there. And
True.
and for you, are there any topics in particular within the sport that you feel strongly about?
Um, to be honest, I mean, I care a lot about the sport, and it's finding a balance between how much you have to be on the inside, or what I call the inside yourself, where you're an athlete, you have to think about selfishly your own kind of career and responsibilities. And you can shoot yourself in the foot if you're almost too much of an advocate on every single issue. You kind of have to pick your battles a little bit. And that battle, I guess, for me is more about how athletes can commercialize themselves a little bit more. So notoriously, and I'm sure you've had loads of people on this podcast that will have experienced this, there's not a lot of money in athletics as a sport. And that's everything from like grassroots athletics clubs who maybe don't have funding all the way up to a lot of professional athletes that you'll see at the Olympics probably have to have some extra kind of side hustle or business in order to earn, not to get by, but to earn maybe the type of money they want to earn. So, trying to speak to athletes and then also to the wider community to get people to understand, look, this is why your favorite athlete might have to do an advert or a sponsorship deal that maybe you think is annoying, but for all you know, that might be an extra 10 or 20% on top of their income that allows them to be able to travel to a race that runs a PB that qualifies for a championship or all that sort of stuff. So I just try and be really transparent about the kind of, not the dark side, but like the reality of what it's like to be a runner.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, income is kind of non-negotiable. It's got to come from somewhere. And
And
for you, what's the number one piece of advice that you give to your younger self?
the number one piece of advice, um, probably just to not really care. Well, not you need to care what people think to an extent, but just to like not be as self-conscious with kind of doing what you think is right. Like when I look back, decisions that I've sort of thought, shall I do this or shall I not? But I've trusted my gut and thought, no, I genuinely believe this is the right thing to do, or I genuinely believe I can do this or that this will work. When I've just gone ahead with it, even though there could be the doubts in your head of, oh, people might say this, or you might look like an idiot if it goes wrong. They're all the moments that have actually like been very, very significant in my like work life, in my running life, in my social life, whatever it is. So yeah, my advice would be to just, if you genuinely think something's a good idea and you think there's value to it, go ahead and do it. And like the worst that's going to happen is people say, people laugh at you or say, I told you so. But I'd rather go ahead and do it and it fail than not do it at all.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead and do it. Then not do it at all, guys. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that comes up time and time again, kind of that staying in your own lane, trusting your instincts and not getting caught up in kind of comparison and what's going on around you. And so if we kind of strip it back to the start, you started running a bit later compared with maybe a lot of athletes at your level. Can you talk us through kind of your previous sporting background, how you came into the sport and what ultimately led you to pursue running?
Yeah, I mean, the quick version is like most kids, I basically played every sport when I was much younger, but I played football to a pretty high level. I was in and out of professional academies when I was younger and county schools and all that sort of stuff. And as a kid, you think, okay, like rightly so, you think you might be a professional footballer, you're around those people and whatnot. When I was say like 12, 13, 14, my mum did a lot of running when she was younger, and she was keen for me to like do some cross countries if I wanted to. And again, I'm playing every sport at this point. Like at school, I'm doing tennis and this and that and stuff that like now I'm terrible at, but I just did everything. So I did do some cross country. So I had an exposure to running at a younger age of like what it's like to go, but I was by no means like good. I was very middle of the road. I was like could get away with it because I was a reasonably athletic kid. The kids who actually went to their athletics club and did stuff were miles ahead, and then the kids who weren't very sporty were behind. I was just kind of like in the middle. And then as I got a little bit older, took it a little bit more seriously when I went to university. So I was still playing football while I was in term time, but like obviously when you're at uni, half the year, you're pretty much back at home because you've got summer holiday, Easter holiday, Christmas. So during those times, just because I enjoyed sport and I kind of got into running a bit more, that's where I would start to take it a little bit more seriously. So I'd do an interval session, or it sounds so basic now I'm a professional runner, but I would just do a little bit more running and go down to like the local athletics club that my mum was part of, stuff like that. And as a result, did a few races and actually showed quite a good potential to the point where I was like, maybe I should like really start doing this. But I had all my friends from football. I still really prefer it. I'm a massive football fan now. Like it was just that time of my life at university that was what I needed from like a friendship point of view, fun, going on nights out with them. Like I just enjoyed that type of thing. And it was only when COVID hit and it was my final year at uni, the football season had to start. And I was like, right, I may as well just like carry on running out. And then during that kind of 9 months when it was locked down, like a lot of people, I massively improved. And as a result, went out to America for a year to do a master's. Because a coach was basically like, yeah, your times are pretty good. They're not amazing. But like, if it's true that you're actually doing no training and you've never really done running and athletics, you could be really good. So like, we'll take a risk. Why don't you come out for a year? So that was 2021, did a year in America. And then everything since then is pretty much, it's pretty linear. Like it follows a normal person's career path. You get a little bit better, you get into better races, you get a bit more better, you get into races. Eventually you get a sponsorship. So that bit's all been plain sailing pretty much since 2021.
No, that's great to hear, and that's really interesting. And I guess to start off with, to follow up on kind of the in and out of, say, the football academies at a younger age, do you think having that kind of structure, and I suppose, they would be aimed towards creating professional footballers, so having that mindset around you and seeing that kind of how to exactly become a professional athlete, do you think that kind of gave you the tools to be the athlete you are now?
Maybe, and on paper it might seem like that, but I think the biggest thing that held me back then was not necessarily any physical attributes in terms of like being skillful, being whatever. I think it was more I wasn't really mentally or emotionally mature enough at that young age. Like it's such a big thing to go into a very cutthroat environment where I wouldn't even want to tell like a 10-year-old that they've not made their school football team. Never mind get them to go 4 times a week for 5 years or however long, to telling them they're going to be a footballer, to then have to sit down and be like, oh, by the way, you're the worst one out of this group, so you're not coming back next week, or whatever. It's a very cutthroat world. And I think for me at that stage, I was very like, I just don't think I was cut out to handle that. Right at the moment, I feel like I'm quite mature, level-headed, like I can control my emotions. When I was younger, it definitely wasn't the case. And I remember I'd get like upset quite a lot after football matches, or I'd get angry with a performance or that sort of thing. So in terms of did that environment help me directly, I can't really draw any exact parallels. But in terms of the attributes I have of being competitive, being determined, having like an attitude of like work ethic trumps talent and everything else, I think definitely like being involved in sport from a young age has helped me with that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear. And so I guess then, you went out to America, wasn't necessarily something that you'd been planning on for a long time. What were your initial expectations when you kind of went through that process of confirming your place in the States?
Yeah, again, I knew, and this is a warning to anyone who's maybe a little bit younger, or if like parents are watching it who have kids that might want to go. It's very different if you're in the running and athletic space, because you understand maybe what the NCAA is, you understand what a Division 1 school is, Division 2. You hear about your Oregons, your NAUs, all the big schools that people understand what the concept is. For me, it was totally alien. I'd played just football till I'm pretty much 20, 21. And then I get approached via email to say like, oh, would you like to come and do this thing in America? For me, all I really registered was like, okay, I consume content online, so I've seen all the big schools, the Oregon, whatever. I'm thinking, wow, American dream, like this looks like it'll be amazing. I know it's going to be free because I'm fortunate enough to get a scholarship, so in that sense, there's kind of no risk. And then I'm also feel like I just had that gut feeling that I wasn't ready to necessarily just go and get a job and kind of live a normal life as such. I was like, no, I've not really explored the running thing. I've explored football to its very end. I can go away and be an okay, average semi-pro footballer if I want to. But like, I feel like there's still something with running. So when I went, I didn't really have any expectations other than what I'd seen online, which was very glitz, glamour, everything you see from top Division 1 schools, basically, which wasn't the case when I arrived. Not to say it was terrible or anything like that. I made some good friends. I had a great time. I got access to a lot of racing opportunities that I definitely wouldn't have got in the UK if I was working full time and stuff like that. Basically gives you a year to be a professional athlete, essentially. And then the most fortunate silver lining, which is like just shows you why sometimes you just have to take risks, is I met my coach, Nick Aguila, who's still my coach now, however many years later, who just so happened to be working at the college for 6 months. And it coincided with, a 6-month period that I was there. So it literally was like perfect timing. And we've worked together since then. Obviously, I've gone on to do way better than we considered I would at the time and things like that. So overall, a massively positive experience, but I do always caveat it with it's not the same experience for everyone. I'm sure if you got 200 people on the podcast, probably 150 of them might go to college and then not break through and become a professional runner and have this happily ever after kind of life. And a lot will have negative experience or injuries or things like that. So definitely do your research before you go.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely do that. And obviously, aside from the amount of natural talent that you have that saw you make those improvements, do you think there's anything else that you did that enabled you to kind of capitalize successfully on your time in the States and kind of get the most out of yourself there?
Yeah, the by far the biggest thing, and I don't talk about this as much just because it kind of never really comes up. It's never really relevant. But while I was in the States, I was always thinking about what the plan is for when I get back, because I was supposed to go for 2 years. It was COVID in the first year. long story short, if you're a new person with like a student visa, you couldn't get into America. So I could only go for a year. So anyway, the whole time I'm thinking, okay, if I reach a certain level, I'm 100% not going to reach a level where as soon as I come home, I'm going to be able to sign a pro contract. I might improve a lot, but that would be like an insane improvement. That's just unrealistic. So when I get back, if I want to keep doing running as seriously as I can and being able to take opportunities, it's not really going to work if I have to go back into a traditional 9 to 5 job, where for most people it's not even 9 to 5 because you may be getting up at 7 to travel to work and then you're not getting home from work till 7 and you've got fit training and stuff around that. So I started to work. I'll save you all the boring story, but essentially I started to work freelance while I was in America in digital marketing, which is still what I do now. I have a small agency and we work with just a few clients. But I was basically like, if I can work from a laptop anywhere in the world and earn enough money that I'm going to still be able to have a normal life, I'm not sacrificing that. That's going to give me the opportunity to basically train whenever I need to train, travel wherever I need to do for races. And the plan was always just to do it for a year. I was like, I'm going to do it for a year, see where I get to with running. If I make improvements, great. And I keep, signing new clients and building the business, fantastic. If not, worst case scenario, then I just almost defer my life and I just get a normal job when I'm done with this year. And I think that's a key thing because a lot of people now, especially we're recording this in July, there'll be a lot of people out there that have maybe run a good time for 1500 meters. So for men, for example, so let's say they've run 341 or 342, maybe all they need to break through and get that 3 or 4 seconds off is the ability to be able to take a Thursday and a Friday off work, enter a race that's in Luxembourg or Spain or somewhere where there's going to be a really good field, and have the finances to be able to go there on Thursday to do the race on Friday night. And that might be the breakthrough they need. And off the back of it, they then maybe get their sponsorship deal or whatever. But because they don't have that ability, because unfortunately most people have to have a full-time job where they're at work or they maybe don't have the disposable income to be able to just travel and do a random race, that might be what's delaying their progress. So the year I came back, I basically just went all in with like, cool, let's take as many opportunities as possible. Let's race everywhere, even if I have to pay off my own back. And now I'm reaping the rewards because now I'm paid to run by Hoka. I'm essentially earning back the money that I spent to get here, if that makes sense. So that's definitely something that I don't take for granted. And that's definitely an important feature in what I was able to do.
Yeah, no, that's definitely so important to, think ahead and have those tools and things in place that enabled you to do what you want. And, it's very impressive to have started up kind of a little side business whilst abroad, whilst trying to train. I think a lot of people probably in your position or who are going to be in a similar position and might, be looking to do something like that. What advice would you give and how did you kind of balance the two?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends how good you are. I think nowadays, a lot of employers are. This sounds bad, but it's nice marketing for a company to have a really good athlete in their team. So Georgia Bell is a great example. I don't know if I'm sure a lot of listeners will look up to Georgia Bell. She managed to take a sabbatical from work where they basically said, look, if you want to go qualify for the Olympics, we're willing to give you, I don't know, for example, 6 months off or whatever it was. I assume maybe some paid leave, or maybe they just said you can have your job back whenever you need it. And they said, go away and do it. And now she's qualified, run the second fastest time ever in Britain. The company can advertise that and say, hey, we supported Georgia to do this. And it looks great for the company. So I'd say, depending on what level you're at, there's no reason you can't try and look for a job and have that open dialogue with your employer where you say, look, by the way, can we have some flexibility? Because every so often I'm going to need a Friday off and I can make up the time another time. You can be very open in that sense. If you want to go the full freelance self-employed route, it totally depends on your skill set, really, because being self-employed it seems nice, but it does offer a different set of challenges and stresses, especially when you're young, of like, I didn't get taught how to do accountancy. I didn't really know how taxes work, all that sort of stuff that you just don't know until you get a letter and you're like, I better sort this out, or have to, what do I do? Basically, you just don't know all these adult things, which, depending on your personality, can actually be more stressful than just going to work and making sure that you do a very specific set of tasks. So that all depends if you have a skill that you think is unique and you'll be able to sell it, like doing, I don't know, graphic design or music producing, or I don't know what else you can do, something like that. Podcasting. There you go. That's one.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, we've had Georgia on in the past. And yeah, think she definitely does, act as a great example for kind of a less traditional way to make it as a pro athlete. And, back to you and your story coming back from America, you performed really, really well, competed internationally, running for Great Britain. What was that like, that transition? Were you expecting to come back in such great shape and be so dominant on the domestic scene?
Not really, no. And I think the trying to get my timings right here, but I think the first year I actually came back, I didn't run like amazingly on the track. I don't think I improved that much. I think I maybe ran a second quicker than I did when I was in America. I didn't actually get too much quicker on the track, so it wasn't like wow, come back and everything's going crazy. But that consistency in the extra few months, I think it was that year that I ended up qualifying for European cross country in the relay team, which was my first vest. That's before I'd had an England vest or like even like a senior counties vest or anything like that. It was like nothing to GB vest, which is quite severe. But I think that was the product of being like, okay, I know I'm getting better. And when you're starting out something, your beginner gains are just like ridiculous. Like if you go from doing 20 miles a week to 60 every single week, and you've been able to have the luxury of essentially being a pro athlete in America where you're kind of doing a little bit of schoolwork and the rest is just training, then you're bound to get a big improvement from that. So getting that first GB vest over cross country, I think that's what made me think, one, this is the coolest thing ever. Like GB kits arriving at my house. I'm going on this trip. I'm with these athletes that like I've been watching their videos on YouTube or things of them racing. I've been like, oh, bloody hell, that's that athlete or this one. Like people I genuinely looked up to and still do look up to be honest. That kind of made me go, right, if I want to do this every year, or I want to do this more, I want to do this on the track, or I want to do this on the road, like that's a new sense of motivation to be like, right, I've proven I can get to this level. How do I get to the next one? And I still got that attitude now of like every time I do something, I went to Glasgow in February for the World Indoors. And even then I was like, wow, this is my first track GB best. I was like, this is totally different to anything I've done before. Like, how can I be one of the athletes that like does this twice a year, every year, indoors and outdoors, And it's like always trying to improve, because there's nothing cooler than going and being like, my dad doesn't really understand running too much, but he really recognizes it. What he does understand is like representing your country for something. Like we always say, it's like, Dad, imagine if you're in the top 11 footballers in England, you're literally now on TV at the Euros and you're doing this and that and whatever. It's like, that's the equivalent of what we are for running. And I think that sort of thing puts it into perspective. It's like, that is actually really, really cool thing to want to aspire to do. So yeah, that's what's keeping me going now.
Nice. No, yeah, it definitely is. And sometimes I guess as you progress further, it can be easy probably to get lost in things and not realize how far you've come and how great your achievements are. And I know a lot of people sort of mention sometimes struggling with imposter syndrome, especially when they make rapid progression. Is that something that you have dealt with yourself?
Yeah, massively. And it's normal at every stage. Like even now, well, not so much now, but like you do think, oh, should I be here? Like everyone's doing this, or do I really belong here? And like even when I've been on, like in January, I went to South Africa on training camp with teammates now, I guess, not teammates at the time. But even then you're a bit like, should I be here? Like this is all like the best athletes in Britain or the best athletes, whoever, like, and everyone's very like knows each other or knows where to go or what they're doing, or like has a routine of things they've done for the last 5 years they've been coming here or whatever. And even then it makes you think like, just doesn't feel like I'm a little bit different. Do you get what I mean? But I always, for me personally, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but the advice I would give is like, I always reflect on how I've got to the position. I'm like, well, I've got here because I've done things a bit differently and because I've just relentlessly done things that I think are correct. So when you go to a race and you're racing people that are better than you, it's like, well, don't just copy what they're doing in the warm-up or run the pace that they're going to run. It's like, what got you to this point? It was the warm-up that you do. It was your racing tactics. It was you believing in your processes and what you and your coach have discussed. And you have to just be kind of relentless with like, no, I got to this level, so I'm going to do it. And just, whether it's true or not, I firmly believe everyone is thinking the exact same thing. Even the people that are maybe nearer the top, they'll have their own kind of worries or doubts about maybe slightly different issues or the expectations that they've got on their shoulders. So I always think one of the biggest edges you can have in a world where everyone's pretty much doing the same training, we're all basically physically the same, is that if you can handle your emotions and nerves and like just anxiety is better than other people, that's probably one of the biggest performance enhancers you can have against another athlete. Like, that's way better than doing like faster intervals than them or whatever, because in that moment of performance, the more that you can kind of push the imposter syndrome to the back of your mind and say, no, I'm going to like do this thing. I feel like that's why people like Keely Hodgkinson, Josh Kerr, etc., are so dominant, because when everyone else is feeling a bit nervous, they just lock in and like, no, I've done this before. It's 2 laps or it's 3 laps. Like, I can do this.
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely keeps coming up the importance of kind of the mental side of the sport. For you, you mentioned there sticking with those things that are correct for you. Can you think of a time or an example where you've been tempted to or kind of doubted yourself but stuck through with what you felt was right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely specifics in terms of training, and like I think this is why me and my coach Nick get along so well. Is that I will often, in the spur of the moment, go with ideas to be like, look, we should do this, or like let's do a bit more, or let's do longer, or whatever. And that's definitely inspired by either not anxieties, but either doubts that other people are doing more or different, and therefore maybe the best way for me to compete is just to emulate what they're doing. Um, and Nick's really good with like being the check and balance to that. Be like, well, yeah, but they're not doing this. Or even if they are, it's like, well, you don't need to do that because you're still competing on this level. So I definitely say when it comes to training, that's where I'm like, oh, seen everyone doing double workouts. Should I do them? Should I do them? And then I have to just go, Callum, no, you don't do them because you do other things, or that's not your training style. And guess what? You still beat the people that do these. So like, just chill out. It's fine. You don't have to kind of do that. But that's definitely a temptation. And even now, I'll send things over to Nick to say like, oh, should we make Thursday session a bit harder? And he'll be like, no, why? And I'll be like, yeah, good point. Like, I don't actually know why. I think it's just because I feel like it'll be better. I don't really have any actual reasoning. So having a soundboard to chat to, whether it's like your parents, your coach, your friends, is definitely important, because it just adds perspective, and you realize that actually you've just been having this internal conversation that's not really grounded in any kind of facts or reason.
Yeah, definitely. I think many people find it reassuring to hear that from an athlete of your caliber. I think it's definitely something that's common amongst people who enjoy training in endurance sports, especially. And yeah, let's touch on that relationship with your coach. So, how is it being coached by someone in the States? And, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it works well. Again, it's just a thing of like doing things differently. I've been to tracks, camps, races where like the coach literally does everything with the athlete. And like maybe that is good. I don't know, like setting out the hurdle drills and doing this and timing every single rep and like carrying the water bottle and stuff like that. Maybe that works for some people. But because I've never had that, I won't know whether I would benefit from that or not. So I'm not saying one's better or worse. But one thing I've had to do, just because I've always been remotely coached, is have a level of independence that I need to know in training. Okay, is this too fast? Is this too slow? Maybe is today a day where I cut it down from 16 reps to 12 reps because I'm not feeling too good? Or, should I cut the run from 10 miles to 8 miles? That's decisions that I have to constantly make. I don't have someone there looking at me saying like, oh, do this, do that, or whatever. Which I think has definitely taught me a level of maturity that means I can manage injury very well, aside from like a freak injury that I've had. I've pretty much never been injured. So like I've got that level of like durability and consistency, which I think comes from understanding your own body and not just having someone else be like, do this, do that. And then we also have a kind of nice bit of flexibility where it allows me to make sure that I can do some training by myself when it's very specific, important things to me that is almost like a non-negotiable. So for example, we need to do this faster pace session, but then train with teammates, friends, people that can support me with sessions by just having a level of compromise. So it's not like I have a coach that's turning up to the track and saying, everyone else, you have to do Callum's session. It's more me saying to Nick, hey, the group in Cambridge are doing 1,200 meter reps on Tuesday. I can see that you've put down that we should do 1Ks. Are you cool with me like doing that? Or can we compromise on it and stuff like that? Which works for me really well, because I basically get the best of both worlds. I get to have other people that can support me with my training, and then I get to support other people with their training, because Nick's very flexible with that sort of thing. And he understands that if I'm happy, then I'm probably going to run better. So it's better just to keep it kind of chill.
No, that's really interesting to hear, and especially around kind of the injury prevention and maybe having a bit more autonomy and control over what you do, and that playing in as a factor. And when you say teammates, are we talking kind of a club, or are these Hoka guys?
Yeah, a mixture. So I live in Cambridge at the moment and train with CNC here. So we have a really deep group of men and ladies, to be fair, of people that represent in Great Britain and England at marathon, all the way down to like juniors that are just getting their first like under 18 vests and stuff like that. So there's always somebody to train with there in terms of in the winter, especially when it's that longer sessions, the tempos, the hills, the grass sessions. That's where you kind of, it's great to have a group of 15 other people that you can run with, which is fantastic. And then as of recently, we're kind of developing a new project with Hoka that is a kind of new group, if you will, where we have 4 or 5 of us, primarily coached by Andy Hobdell, where we go on camps together, ideally are based together for portions of the year, working towards similar race goals, things like that. So that for me, I'm in that transition period now where because of being injured, there's not really been a need to do it. But once I kind of get back running, that's where Nick, my current coach, and Andy will be working a bit closer together to say, okay, if I go to Flagstaff for 4 weeks, it's pointless me doing my own training when I'm with 5 other guys that have the same coach. So actually, how can I basically just join in with the group and do the exact same training and then just reference Nick as a bit of a soundboard to say, hey, like, how do you think about this mileage or like any tweaks on this session? And kind of, again, be greedy and get the best of both worlds, where I basically have 2 coaches that are helping to do things as well as myself saying, hey, I don't really fancy this, or this is a bit fast. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of athletes listening thinking that would be hell. Like they like just having a plan to be like, no, do this. This is what we're doing. Get on with it. But I like also having the thinking because I'm a bit of a nerd with the training and the planning and that sort of thing. I quite like having a little bit of say.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I quite like to be on more of the say side. And I think that these days there is, I guess, moving away a bit more from that traditional coaching relationship. There's a lot more different styles and flexibility that's being shown. And for you, would you say that it sounds like you have a bit of a mixture of solo training and group training from kind of a mental perspective, especially? How do you find it affects you training solo or with a group?
I'm happy with both. Like I tend to train solo if one, it fits my like day or like weekly structure better, i.e. if it means that I have to do my session at 10 in the morning in order to be able to do all the other stuff I need to do in the day with work or family or whatever it is, then I'll do that rather than think, no, I better do it with somebody. So I'll wait till 6 p.m. and then the whole day be like messed up. So from that perspective, I think like holistically understanding that sometimes training by yourself is just a little bit better. That being said, naturally, I always do my best sessions when I'm training with other people. You share the workload, you have that bit of camaraderie. There's other things to take your mind off the fact that you're just running around the track. So yeah, it's a mix. And again, I like having that mix of stuff. I'm more than happy to go out and do something by myself if I know it's important and specific work I need to do. But the more I can mix in with people, the better, really.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think a lot of people feel the same way. And before we kind of move on towards your more recent injury and kind of things around that, be great to touch on your job. I know that you still have a full-time job at the moment, if that's correct. Can you kind of talk through how you balance the two?
Yeah, again, fortunate that I'm self-employed, so in terms of scheduling and things like that, it's pretty flexible. Long story short, I work in digital marketing on like paid social, paid ads. So like if you're on Facebook or Instagram and you see those annoying ads that come up every so often with a sponsored post, that's like me pressing buttons basically. But the clients that I work with who are in a variety of different industries, I have a really good relationship where they, again, that thing of like people like or I think people buy into other people's hobbies and successes, and my clients like the fact that I'm pushing myself and doing stuff, and they want me to also succeed. So if we normally have a meeting at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and for whatever reason that's the day I'm traveling or racing, it's pretty flexible for it just to be able to be moved. So yeah, I like doing other stuff outside of running. I think I don't have the sort of personality where I can be always on just thinking about running and training and competing, as is proven in the last 4 months when I've not been running. Having other passions to be able to, like now we're recording this at 10 a.m. on a Thursday. Like that's a luxury a lot of people don't have. But if I wasn't, I know we're speaking about running, but like it's a different format and kind of it's a different outlet to be able to speak about business or speak about marketing for a call or do something different that's not just running.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is nice to have that spread, or I certainly think so anyway. But yeah, like you say, it definitely depends on kind of your personality type. And last question before we move on to kind of the injury phase. What's your most unexpected kind of passion or hobby, or something you think people wouldn't expect you to be into?
Jigsaws. Jigsaws. I really enjoy jigsaws actually. My mum, shout out to my mum actually, she'll definitely listen to this. She purchased me a jigsaw mat, which I don't know if anyone out there's heard of, but normally when you just make it on the table and it's really annoying because it's just there for like the full week or whenever you're trying to do it. Now you can make it on the mat and then roll it up. It saves the jigsaw pretty much, then you can restart at a later date. So yeah, I've got a big collection of completed and uncompleted jigsaws that I need to carry on with. Maybe that'll inspire me to start one next week.
Nice. How many pieces are you normally going for?
Just 1,000, just a
Okay.
thousand. I can't be like I'm not. I know there's some way you can go crazy. I've only got a small flat anyway, so I don't actually know where I put a 2,000 piece one, to be honest. Um, but yeah, I think again, it's something about. I never do it in silence. I'll always put something like maybe in the background on TV or a podcast or something like that. But again, I think it's just that thing of you're not really thinking about anything. You're kind of half consuming the content, and then you're like, I guess you're thinking like, oh, what piece can fit here, and maybe you're doing that sort of challenge, but. I like jigsaws. I like crosswords. Anything where I kind of put my phone down for an hour and don't go on my phone and just like do something else that kind of in my head gets my brain working. Whether it actually does or not, I don't know. But it's just kind of therapeutic, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, the double doubles is definitely the one. I'll agree with you there. Okay, and so, your injury, I think it's gone pretty mainstream over kind of social media. I think a lot of people empathize with you on it, a bit of an unfortunate situation there. But just to build a bit of a picture, so 2024, started a really strong season for you, 3:39 on Strava, 2 days after a 3:57 mile, you were second in the British Indoor 1500s. Talk us through kind of, what sort of place you were in going into those World Indoor Champs?
Yeah, it was like the craziest 3 weeks because I went out to Boston in, I think like maybe like February the 11th, 12th, something like that. And that was like my one shot or my last shot rather at getting the World Indoor qualifying time. So I raced there, ran 3:53, I don't know, say point two and you needed 0.5 or something. Basically, I just sneaked under the time. And that was like a massive, like that was like the best night. It was like, wow, I never thought I'd be able to run a mile time like that. I can't believe we set out this season to actually get this time and I've done it. Like my coach was there because obviously it was in America. Charlie came over. It was like an amazing trip. And it was like, okay, awesome time. A week later was UK Indoor Champs, as you said, came second, got the call that night to be like, cool, you've made the team. I'm like, great, this is amazing. I'm actually going to the World Championships. Like, this is very cool. Like, I'm loving this. And then 2 weeks later in Glasgow, everything's fine, warm up. I did have a difficult heat. So I'm not going to pretend like, oh, wow, I definitely would have made the final and done all this sort of stuff. I did have a very difficult draw because I was ranked like literally like the lowest person there. But yeah, as I was running, I got spiked by another athlete on the back of my Achilles and it sliced through my Achilles tendon, basically, which I didn't know anything about Achilles, calves, anything at the time. Apparently, it was obvious that it happened straight away and people like knew what it was. To me, because I'm so naive of like injuries, I didn't really know. I was just like, I know something's happened. I can see I've been spiked, but for all I knew, it was, I don't know what it was, but I couldn't continue the race basically. Had stitches in like the medical room straight away, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty bad, mate." But like it could just be a flesh wound. Like, were you going to have to go for a scan? And then I went for a scan the next day, which is the benefit of doing it at a major championship because you get looked after by the team, which was a blessing. And then it was like, yeah, you've torn it, so you're probably going to need surgery, and the normal recovery time to start running again is 6 months. So it was like, okay, great. Like a day ago, I was lining up in the World Champs, and now I'm not going to run for 6 months. Quite a whirlwind.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a lot to take in, and especially when it's, I suppose, in the category of freak accidents, outside of your control, it really is very unfortunate. And I guess, the moment you got spiked, what was that like? I guess, you took a fall on the track. What was going through your head in that moment?
Yeah, I was definitely frustrated. When I got actually spiked, it felt like, and again, apparently this is like a normal thing, but I just didn't know. it felt like if you've ever had like a dead leg, or like if you like bang your quad maybe, or like your bicep, and you get that almost like bruising feeling, a little bit like when you've had maybe like an injection that's been sore or something, that immediate kind of impact. And it felt like my calf had gone really solid, almost like I'd got cramp. And that's why I continued to take a few steps afterwards after I'd been spiked. It wasn't like I just like fall straight to the ground, because I was like, oh, it might just be a cramp, like spasm that's going to go away in a couple of steps. Obviously, after those couple of steps, I was like, wow, I can't run anymore. And like, that's when I had to go to the ground. And I remember being so frustrated. And I literally remember having a thought where, because it was indoors, the crowd is so close to you from the outside lane of the track. It's literally like one advertising barrier, and then you've got the first row of all the seating. So you are so close to people that, like, I remember thinking, like, I don't know, like, not embarrassed, I don't think is the right word, but like, be careful how you act, basically, because I'm quite an emotional person. Like, I would so be like slapping the track, or like being angry or swearing or whatever. But I remember consciously having a thought to be like, be careful, be careful, be careful. Like, one, it's on TV. Two, the people are literally right there. Like, don't make unnecessary fuss. Which I think, because I was suppressing frustration, I think that's why it came out in being upset. And that's why I was like almost crying. And I was just like, this is the worst. I'm getting literally wheelchaired off from pretty much the biggest moment of my career. Which I don't think anyone, it's good to show emotion. Like, I don't think anyone cares about that. But I'm glad that I, for whatever reason, had the conscious thing to be like, don't make it worse than it is. Nothing's going to undo what's happened right now. I'm sure it's like an accidental thing. It's not like you've been pushed over or you're about to win gold and something happened. It's like, just, be professional. And I think I've carried that attitude all the way through to now, where I've just been like, okay, there's going to be moments where it's annoying, frustrating, whatever, but just be professional, approach it in the way that you would give advice to other people to do, which would be take it a day at a time, an hour at a time, session at a time, and just gradually get through, which, I'm at the end of it, hopefully soon.
Yeah, no, gosh, I mean, it is a lot and it is really unfortunate. It's a big moment. And yeah, I think rightly so to feel all those emotions. But it's an interesting point you raised there, kind of, the being on TV, the professionalism, you run for a brand. There are a lot of kind of other things to think about. And yeah, I guess for you, go back to finding out what the situation was, being told it's going to be 6 months. How did you kind of process that over the next few days?
Yeah, over the next few days, I don't think I really did process it. The best thing that I did was the day afterwards. So I did it on the Friday, and there was still the Saturday and Sunday left of competition with all the finals and stuff. The best thing I did was I said to the doctor visit, I said like, oh, as long as I'm like careful, I had it in like a boot and I had crutches. I was like, am I fine? And they gave me like quite a lot of painkillers. Am I fine to go to the stadium? And they were like, yeah, as long as you're safe and like make sure that like they seat you in like the disability area or whatever, like you're fine to do it. And I think that was one of the best things I did, because straight away I was having conversations with people that were seeing me on crutches, whether it be fans that were in the stadium or like other athletes that would be like, oh, sorry, I saw it last night on TV, or like, what's the diagnosis? And I think I had to immediately come to terms with like, I started explaining like, oh, this is what happened. This is what they think the injury is. Yeah, they think the timeline is 6 months. And I think because I hit it straight away. I wasn't sat in a hotel room by myself for 3 days, like thinking about it in my head and crying or thinking about what the worst was going to be. It was just like, right, it's out there now, is what it is. And almost got over that fear of being like, well, I've told people it actually wasn't that bad. I didn't break down or anything. It was like, yeah, it is what it is. Like, it's happened. The time that it hit me properly though is when I came out of surgery. So I had to wait 2 weeks to have surgery. Because of the nature of the injury, because I was spiked essentially with some metal, there was obviously like risk of infection and stuff. So I had to wait a couple of weeks to have surgery. When I came out of surgery, I remember trying to walk over to go to the toilet, and that's where, in the hospital room, and that's when it hit me, and I got really upset. And I remember my girlfriend was in the room, and I was like, I actually can't walk. Like, I can't limp. I was like, that's when it hit me, that I was like, they've just cut open my leg, sewed a bit back together, and now I have to wait half a year for it to potentially run again. And then there's all these questions of like, oh, will it be strong enough? Will I be able to run? Will I be as good as it used to be? And all that starts to then hit you. So I think that's the bit where I was like, okay, this is going to take a bit of coming to terms with. And the few days after I had surgery, I was a bit down. I was a bit like, okay, this is like, yeah, not an ideal situation. but my surgeon was very big on like not stopping physical activity. Literally from the day after surgery, he was like, yeah, you can get on the bike and do 10 minutes, and then you can do 20, and then you can do 30, and then, progressively doing different exercise and things. So I've always had something to focus on, which is good.
No, definitely. And I think, firstly, with the pre-surgery phase, tackling it head on, kind of like diving in at the deep end, probably a lot, but sounds like kind of it is a good way to deal with it and, come to terms with it quickly. And yeah, I mean, it must, yeah, definitely hit hard when you realize you can't walk, especially being used to running, a lot and everything like that. And I guess during that process, looking back on it, is there anything that you would have done differently or wish you'd known? When you initially had those thoughts?
I'm not sure. I was very, very fortunate that I got a lot of messages from people that I respect that had been through injury. A lot of athletes who had had injuries as bad, or similar, or even worse, who have then gone on in the last couple of years to run PBs, win, do whatever. And that very much, I'm a very like perspective person. I don't like feeling sorry for myself. And it was like, well, okay, this person had this injury, they were out for 6 months, and it took them 2 years after that to get better, but now they're better than they were before their injury. Or this person's had 3 Achilles surgeries, I'm only having one, like, and they're fine. So that sort of thing. So to be honest, there's nothing I wish I knew or that I would have changed, because I've done everything that I should do correctly, really. The big thing was just making sure that I had fun. And by that, I mean, did things I wouldn't normally do in the summer when I'm racing. So the example I gave earlier, where on a Thursday you're going to Luxembourg to do this, and then Iceland, and then wherever, and all your summer is planned around trying to get the best out of yourself, pressure every single week to do a race or to train or whatever. Because I wasn't going to do that, I made an effort to be like, right, what stuff do we not normally do? So like, I rarely go back to Leeds to see my family just because I'm always busy. So I was like, well, fine, we can do that. Should we book a holiday? Like, let's book some trips, because I don't have to think, oh, what am I going to do in July? What if I qualify for this race? It's like, well, I'm not racing, so like, let's book and do this. Or should we go out for drinks tonight? Well, yeah, because does it really matter? Because I'm not running for 6 months. It's that sort of thing, which I think is a key bit of advice, because you have to take your rehab seriously, but also you need to be happy and have a good kind of like mental side of things. And normally, if all your happiness is derived primarily from performing well, running times, challenging yourself on the track, when that's missing, you need to fill the void with something, which I think I've done reasonably well. My girlfriend might disagree on some elements of it, but I've tried my best.
Yeah, no, definitely perspective is a really powerful thing, and thinking long term as well. And it sounds like you've got a lot of confidence behind what you decided to do and how you chose to spend your time. What do you think gave you, I guess, the confidence at the time to know, yeah, I'm doing the right thing and stay on track with that?
Um, Probably an unhealthy level of trust in the surgeon that I had. So I was fortunate enough to have my surgery supported by this government scheme called TAS, which is like a talented athlete support thing. I should understand what it stands for at this point, but I still don't know what the letters stand for. And basically, I had the surgery supported by a surgeon that British Athletics had recommended me to, and they basically said, look, like, this is the person. There's one of 2 people that we send people to. This is pretty much as good as it can get. And from the first time that I sort of met him, I just bought into being like, maybe again through naivety, I was like, I'm going to trust 100% of what you say. I'm going to do 100% of what you say, even if other people say I shouldn't, or that it's weird, or if other physios disagree, or whatever it is. And if things don't work out, I know that all I've done is what I should have done, and followed the right procedures. And because I've done that and always trusted, no, if I just do what he says, it'll pay off. To this point, it's been working. Like, he'll tell me to do some certain exercise or something that I think is a bit like, it's really hard to do. And in the moment in the consultation room, I really can't do it. And I get in the car on the way home and I'm like, that's crap. Like, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then I keep doing it. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, that's exactly what he said would happen. Like, now it is strong enough and I can do this. Or, he's constantly being proved correct. So I just keep doing what I'm told, basically, which is, I think, an underrated thing for athletes sometimes, is if you really have no expertise in an area. So like, I know about running and could probably coach myself to a decent level. So therefore me and Nick can have some dialogue. I can't have that same dialogue with a surgeon because I've got absolutely no idea what to do for an injury, how to support it, all that sort of stuff. So in this case, I am just doing what I'm told.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important in situations like that, and a good thing to bring up. And I think another thing to touch on as well is maybe on those days where you're thinking, oh yeah, this is crap, or perhaps you see some race that you would have raced in at the time. How do you stop, I guess, thoughts of maybe despair or negativity creeping in?
Yeah, that is frustrating. Like this weekend, as of we're recording now, I don't know when's this coming out? Soon.
Sunday.
Oh, okay. So yeah, if people listen to this on Sunday, yesterday was the London Diamond League. And like I look at the entries for the MZ Car Mile, and again, no disrespect to any athletes in there, it is a world class field, but I can count a lot of people who have got a faster PB than and a faster season's best, even though I only raced in February. And it makes me think like, oh, I would have been making a Diamond League debut in front of 60,000 people in London. Like, how amazing would that have been? But rather than be like, oh, that's crap, I'm not going to watch it, like that's negative or whatever, I'd way prefer to be like, well, let's embrace it. How about the athletes actually are doing it? Like my friends that are getting that opportunity to do it, like I don't want to be that guy that's like really salty about it and doesn't chat them or whatever. I want to be the first person there to be like, this is quality, boys. Like, how good is this? Or like, look who you're racing against. Or like, I'm going to come down and watch. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, that's how I would want people to be. I'd hate the idea that like last year when I had a breakthrough around 3:35, I don't like the idea that somebody was sat at home who was injured thinking, oh, I wish he didn't do that. I like to convince myself they'd be pleased to be like, fair enough. Like it's almost like proof that like anyone can get to that level. So even though it is annoying, and I'm sure in the rest of the summer I'll watch some people run some ridiculously quick times where I might have previously beaten them, and I'll be thinking like, oh, that could have been me. Instead, I just try and take it as motivation to be like, well, okay, if I was ahead of them at the time, and now they're ahead of me by a second or 2 seconds or however much it is, I mean, that's good motivation for me. That means that I can get to that level. Like if they've done it, why can't I? So I do try and flip it around. But yeah, it is frustrating when you see kind of people who you consider a similar ability smashing it and you're at home through no fault of your own. It is a bit annoying, but that sport, I'm sure, it could quite easily be the other way around at some point.
Yeah, no, definitely it is. It definitely is hard. And I think you present, an excellent kind of role model of, a really strong and I guess, yeah, nice mindset in some respects. It kind of is the way to go, and there's the way to keep the sport nice and bring out the best in people. And for you, I guess, that takes strength of character to think in that way and follow through on those thoughts. For you, how much would you say that kind of comes from just your natural personality, the way you are, versus making a conscious effort to, maybe reframe things or think in a more positive manner?
Yeah, I don't know. I think two big things for me, which might be little things to other people or seem like stupid. One is my Instagram account because since I've been, well, I was still all right, but like since I've been a worse athlete and just starting complete amateur to now being a professional athlete and going to world champs and stuff like that, I've documented every single bit, however good or bad it's been. So last summer, when every single week was me posting that I've got a new PB and everything was going crazy, all the way to the last 2 months where it's just me being like, oh, I did a calf race today. I went in the pool today, like completely boring, not exciting stuff. There's over 1,000 posts on there where I've shown the whole journey. And I think because I feel like, one, I enjoy doing that, and two, it almost feels like a responsibility now to keep it going. You'd be surprised how much self-reflection you do in those posts, because not only are you like writing something that might be like a factual update, i.e. you've done something, so you've run a time or whatever, you're thinking about what are my actual emotions, because you want it to be authentic. It's like, how do I actually feel? So let's not write a happy post if I feel crap, or let's not do it the other way around. If I'm actually fine, let's not milk it and pretend that I'm not fine. And then the added layer on top is you're thinking, how will other people perceive this? Which I think is an important layer that you don't really normally do in life, because you're thinking, okay, I feel like this and I've written down how I feel. If someone else reads that without knowing the details, does it accurately portray how I feel, or does it come across as maybe being like, does it come across that I don't really care? Does it come across that I care too much? Does it, would, especially with my audience, which is a lot of young or aspiring athletes, will they look at it and think like that's irresponsible, or that's the way that they should be about something? So I always try and think one, am I telling the truth and being honest with myself? And second of all, will other people see it how I intend? Which I think is a really good kind of coping thing, because I know sometimes on the way to races, I've like typed out what my Instagram post is going to be for the race, say the day before. And the first draft, I'll write something really like, yeah, fearless and like, yeah, I'm ready to take on the race. And then I read it back and I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm actually pretty nervous. Why am I writing? Like, I'll be like, why? I'm not going to post something that's like going to win and run this and do whatever. I'm like, just because I've seen other people do that, I'm like, I'm actually quite nervous and I don't know how this is going to go. So then I'll rewrite how I actually feel, and then it comes across way better. And I'll put out like, hey, don't know how tomorrow's going to go, going to give it my best shot, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's actually quite a nice check and balance on your own emotions to make sure you're not lying to yourself. The other thing that I do is basically the same, but I regularly write a training diary where I have at the start of the week, the box is called, the one I've got right now, it says intention. I don't really do my intention for the week, but it's more like, what does this week look like? What's the focus for it? So is it like a new gym program? Is it stepping up my rehab? Is it being more positive this week? Whatever it is. And at the end of the week, it has a box that is reflection, where I'm kind of putting like, how was that week? So was it a bit of an up and down week? Was it a really good one? And wow, I can't wait for next week, I'm smashing the rehab. Was it, got injured this week, that was crap. It just allows you to have some kind of outlet that a lot of people, especially boys, I think men don't have as much as maybe they should, because it's kind of seen as a bit like, oh, why would you write down how you're feeling? But it does help.
Yeah, no, definitely. You raise a lot of interesting points there. And I guess it's kind of a way of creating more accountability to yourself and opportunities to take those moments. But yeah, you mentioned there with kind of perception as well. That's a particularly interesting point, because, it is one thing to put something out there, but then every single person who sees that's going to have their own perception tainted by their own lens of life, and you kind of trying to navigate something that authentically reflects you. Have you ever found yourself getting lost and kind of caught up in a loop of overthinking it all, and how do you kind of navigate through that? And does it affect your performance and your own mindset?
I wouldn't say overthinking it. I think I'm pretty, when it comes to like social media, I'm very just like, this is how I feel. This is the truth of the situation. This is what I'm putting out. I never really think, will this get likes or will it not? I sometimes think, is it relevant? I.e., like, you don't need to see a picture of me every day doing the same gym exercise. That's when it's not relevant, even though every day I'm doing the same gym exercise. So there's that element, I guess, where I'm censoring like the frequency, I guess, of which I would like update something. But it's as much for me is, I've said this in a video before, and it sounds so stupid, but like, if you're in my situation, like I think you would do the same. But like, I've been sat the night before races before, and I felt a little bit like nervous, or how am I feeling? I have watched back my own reels from when I'm training in the last 6 weeks before that, to be like, wow, look at all this training you've done. Remember that session, remember this. And like, it's filled me with confidence to be like, you can physically see the progress you've made from this video where you're running 45 seconds to this one where you're running 41 seconds or whatever it is. And that's actually given me confidence to be like, no, you've trained for this. Like, you've done well. So even though, yes, I guess we're in a world where I'm trying to commercialize it and do adverts and sponsors and gain a little bit of money from it, it is a genuinely like a personal tool that I also use. And because I know that any lies that I would put out there, or things where I overthink it and maybe I don't share as much detail as I should, when I come back to read on it and look at it, it's only going to like hurt me, if you get what I mean, if I've not like been honest with what I've got there. So yeah, I just try and make it an account as if nobody is like, as if it's like just me that's consuming the content. And if other people happen to like it, they do. But yeah, if I was doing it for like to try and grow the following, I'm not doing it the right way. Basically, I should be far more like motivational or like random with stuff and whatever, like a lot of people that have got big followings are. But I like to just do my own thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think honesty and integrity are always respectable attributes to have. And especially in kind of the world we live in today, I think, it is really good to stay true to your own values. And yeah, so in terms of kind of the injury overall, you mentioned now you're towards the end of the process, which is really great to hear. Looking back on it, would you say that, the opportunities that you've managed to find through being injured, maybe doing things you haven't normally done, what's something new that you've learned, and something maybe new you've learned about yourself during this process?
What have I learned? I think one thing I've learned is that I'm very, I don't know if optimistic or positive is the right word. I think positive is the right word. I wouldn't necessarily am always optimistic in the sense that I do like to prepare for the worst. Like I often find myself thinking like, okay, again, we'll use the gym example. Like if I know I'm going in and today I need to do these certain reps at these certain weights, I'm I'm positive. I'm like, yeah, great, I'm going to smash this. But in my head, I always prepare for the worst. I'm like, oh well, if I don't, like, it's not the end of the world, or I'll do it next week or whatever. Which is something that I must have always done, but I've never realised the extent to which I do it. So even now, I'm saying to you like, oh, I should be running in August. Like that's the plan, and I'm positive that I'll get there. But in my head, I'm like already prepping to be like, if you don't run in August, it's not the end of the world. Like that's fine, or like you can cope with that. What's the worst that happens if you don't? So that's something that I've definitely learned I do. And I need to make sure that I balance the positivity with preparing for the worst. Because if it goes in one direction or the other, I think that's when you either start to get delusional or you start to be way too risk averse and you're thinking like, no, what if, I better not do this. So yeah, I've just realized that I always do that. I literally will be like, oh yeah, I can't wait for today. Oh, but what if it doesn't go well? So
Yeah,
kind of random.
totally.
And then what's one thing? What was the other question? One thing that I've like picked up or something.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I've picked up. I mean, we're still creating video content and things like that. And I guess it's less about. It's more about how I can be like behind the lens. Is that the right word? Yeah, not in front of the camera, basically. So like, not physical skills of like creating video because that's still not something that I can do or that I've learned at all. But more how I can like work with Charlie that I make the videos and with and say, okay, if this isn't about me, like how can we spotlight other athletes or what else could we create? Like how can we do this? And since I got injured, we've done stuff, with Becky Briggs, with some of my Hoka teammates. We did something with Josh Kerr over British Champs, like things that through a complete byproduct of the fact that I can't run anymore and therefore the video is not very interesting, we had to push our boundaries to say, okay, what else can we do? So I'd say, creating, producing types of content is something that I think I've got a lot better at rather than just kind of starring in the content.
Yeah, no, it's always nice to kind of, try out new things and moving forwards. I don't know, when's the kind of first day that you might be allowed to run?
I don't know. I have an appointment on not this weekend. Well, so the weekend after people listen to this is hopefully my final consultation. And he said to me, your present in August might be that you can run. That's the last time I spoke to him, like 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. So we'll see. I mean, the way I'm describing it right now is that if I was in a moment of danger, I can physically run away from something. So it's not that I'm like, my legs don't work. It's just how I can return to running safely and make sure that it's properly healed. Because there's not really any rush. I'm not going to gain anything extra whether I run in July or August. The summer's done. But yeah, every so often I do a bit of jogging on the spot and I think, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. But not quite there yet.
Nice. You're not going to get, eaten by some wild animal should that happen.
I know.
That's good to hear. And so, yeah, I guess moving forwards, when you do return back to running, fingers crossed that all goes well. Do you think you're going to be a changed athlete in any way? Or do you feel like you might have a different approach mindset wise at all?
I really hope so. I think you never know until you're in the moment. But the way that I'm thinking right now is like, pretty much the worst thing has happened to me. 6 months away from running, and it's not killed me. Like I'm fine. Do you know what I mean? My mental health has been absolutely fine. Physically, I've got back to health. Like it can't really like in my head right now. It might sound stupid, but like what I've been through is surely worse than like a bad result or blowing up in a race or whatever. So I think that might instill the confidence in me to be like almost to go for it a little bit more. Where it's like, well, okay, if I go for this and I run a bit faster than I should and I blow up, it's like, okay, I'll end with a bad result. Well, 6 months ago, you couldn't even have a bad result. You couldn't have any results because you had one leg in a cast. So it's like, maybe it'll give me that kind of mental fortitude to be like, actually, it's not going to get any worse than it was. So let's kind of just go for it a little bit more. So mentally, I think that'll be a big benefit. And then physically, I think just cross training. Like I didn't do any cross training before. I just ran. And the unfortunate reality of the situation is it's going to be a while before I'm running back up to maybe what my mileage used to be. So I'm always going to have to maintain an element of cross training. But if I can learn to enjoy it and find some benefit from it, then, an athlete that's doing 60 miles plus 6 hours of cross training is better than an athlete that's doing 60 miles of running and no cross training. Like, that must just be a fact, right? So I'm hoping that doing some extra kind of non-running stuff can help benefit me, but we'll just have to see.
No, that's really great to hear. And, hopefully, you get the results that you deserve to come in the future. And I guess, yeah, so if we move on to just kind of a couple of quick tips and then close off with some quick fire questions. For anyone who's maybe currently injured for the first time, not sure what to do, what's your advice for them from a physical perspective and also a mental perspective?
When you're first injured, mental perspective, don't Google stuff and convince yourself it's worse than it is, which I think is just everyone does that. And see a specialist or more than one specialist as soon as possible. I know, depending on NHS, private, whatever, that can be difficult. But like, the sooner you see a physio that can tell you, hey, I think that this is what's wrong with you, and or see two physios and see if they both agree, then the better. Because Googling stuff, asking your friends, whatever, it always, and I've been there, it just doesn't end well.
Yeah, no doctor internet, guys. Leave that one at the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then from kind of a physical perspective, a mental perspective, sorry.
A mental perspective, be positive. I think do I actually think that? Yeah, I think be positive, because in most cases, it's probably not as bad as you're initially going to think it is. And if it is, then that's a bridge you'll just have to cross. But like, there's no point panicking before you know what the actual issue is. So, your leg's hurting, you've had to stop a session halfway through. It's like, okay, don't convince yourself that's it, you're going to lose all your fitness and you're never going to run for 2 weeks. For all you know, it might just be like you need 2 days off and you need a sports massage and then it's fine. Or you need to do these strengthening exercises and it's going to be fine. So just stay positive and don't convince yourself otherwise.
Brilliant. Yep, stay positive. Okay, and then to close off with a couple of quick fire questions. So, reading or watching?
Am I just giving like a one-word answer for this?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Okay, watching.
Anything in particular?
Watching. I do like documentaries rather than series, and I will literally watch a documentary about anything. It's a bit of an obsession.
Nice. Yep, got to get the facts in. Okay, sweet or sour?
Sweet.
Favorite sweet thing?
Favorite sweet thing? Not necessarily my favorite, but what I've been having recently is rich tea biscuits, but covered with chocolate, which I didn't actually know is a thing. Get them from Aldi. They're a bit premium for Aldi, but they are a nice little treat. So that's what I've been having.
Definitely an improvement on a rich tea. I might have to check those out myself. Hot or cold?
Hot, as in weather, temperature. Yeah.
Favorite location?
I don't really have a favorite location, but I just think everything the UK, to be honest, when it's hot, is just so much better than when it's cold. The vibes, I think, are just so much better. Everyone's like having a good time. People smile at each other and stuff. Like, the sun is just like better, I think, for people. So the UK, when it's hot, I think you can't beat it.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be great if the sun could show its face a bit more this summer, but we move. Stay in or go out?
Go out. I'm gonna say I like going out, doing things, going out for a meal or like just like a pint after training or something like that. I like doing different stuff.
Nice. Yeah. Swim or spin?
Oh, good question. Well, I'm going to say spin primarily because I think a lot of people out there that actually do swimming will say you've actually done none, because I haven't done any swimming. I've just been aqua jogging. The pool is nice. I find it quite relaxing. The pool I go to in the morning anyway is always pretty quiet. It's not like there's like kids or anything. So it's almost silent apart from splashing around, which is quite therapeutic. But from a fitness perspective, I think you can't beat the bike, really. There's a lot you can get out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Bikes are the most underrated, I think. Spikes or flats?
Ooh, I'm going to say spikes just because the track is primarily what I do. And obviously cross country, you're wearing spikes as well. But considering I did get spiked in the Achilles, maybe I should say flats. Yeah, maybe not ideal. Maybe I should have a vendetta against them now. But I'm going to say spikes.
Yeah, you can get the spikes now, a bit like Astro ones.
Yeah, true.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee, definitely. I don't drink tea at all. Occasionally we'll have green tea, but like normal like English breakfast or anything like that, I don't like it. I think it tastes like dirty water. So I just have coffee.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Cats or dogs?
Uh, Neither really, but as in I don't love them. It's very controversial. I get a lot of stick for this from people because I don't really find things cute. Like, for example, like if you see a young kid, like I find that quite like, oh, that's quite endearing. Like it's a human, like they're doing something funny or whatever. I get that. But when people like go crazy over a cat or a dog, and they're like, "Do you see that dog?" I'm like, "Well, I did see it, but like, didn't really, you know." If a dog does something cool, catches a ball, frisbee, chases something, that I can get behind that. Things that do activities, or if a cat's just there purring and kind of enjoying its life, fine. But I'm never really like a big stroker and anything like that.
Well, I have to say, can't say you too much for that because I'm not the biggest animal person myself. I do think they're cute, but from a distance for sure. Okay, and finally, bets on the Olympics. Who are your top three men in the 1500 meters?
Oh, top three. I don't want to be boring with it, but I reckon the top three could be Josh Kerr, Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and Cole Hocker. But I don't know what order. But I think that's my three.
Nice. This sounds pretty like there's a good chance of those coming in. Okay, so no, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on, sharing some of your amazing mindset and the strength of character that you've kind of shown throughout this injury. And I know a lot of people have found it inspiring. So thank you.
No, much appreciated. Thanks for having me. And keep up the good work on the podcast.
No, vice versa with your stuff. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. This really helps to get the content out there. And I want to make this podcast the best possible for you. So go follow Fitter, Faster, Happier on Instagram. That's Fitter, Faster, Happier to leave your questions, comments, and feedback, and for updates and guest requests. All the best for the week ahead, guys. Run happy, live happy, be happy.